Hello, my name is Marilyn Dukes. This is my presentation for MSN 564 Cultural Spiritual Care Across the Lifespan. My disclaimer is noted here. Once again, permission is obtained from me, the presenter. This is designed for as an educational tool. So no professional or medical or legal advice is warranted here. So multicultural breastfeeding support in the hospital setting. Introduction. So breastfeeding in many cultures throughout the world, breast milk is accepted and encouraged as the first food for infants. So a lot of cultural backgrounds and everyone around the world pretty much breastfeeds and on the same page as when we initially start with breastfeeding, that breast milk is what's best for the baby. In hospitals, they hire registered nurses that are board certified lactation consultants. That's currently my position. So I'm a registered nurse and with a specialty as a certified lactation consultant. My population is the military crowd. I work for a military hospital. My cultural groups are from all around the world. I'm gonna concentrate on the populations that are pretty big that I serve at the hospital. I usually am working with spouses of different cultural heritage. And for example, like I may have, someone from the Hispanic heritage married to someone from Filipino heritage, or military members may marry someone from another country, or either it'll be an immigrant here that is now an American citizen that marries someone who is indigenous to the States. So I get a lot of different backgrounds on a lot of my clients. My concentrated population will be Black Indigenous Americans, Filipino Americans, and Japanese Americans. Ethnic group sample. So I'm going to talk about those three. So, cultural perceptions of breastfeeding for Black Indigenous Americans, Filipino Americans, and Japanese Americans. The social influences are usually from peers or healthcare providers. For Black Indigenous Americans, what we'll see that's kind of negative in their social settings and their beliefs is going to be working, and breastfeeding tends to stop. Most definitely working stops breastfeeding for them. They are aware of some of the benefits. If they are eligible for WIC, they will implement formula with their baby's feeding plan. Sometimes that does interrupt breastfeeding. So if they start formula, they may start formula by the time they go back to work. They do believe that the baby will be spoiled if they breastfeed for too long. So they view that as a negative thing. So those are three of the challenges that I would go through to encourage and re-educate in this population. And then the positive thing is that when they do make their doctor's appointments prenatally, they may see magazines, or the doctor may give them pamphlets on breastfeeding, and they will actually feel encouraged to breastfeed. And then it's just a part of their culture to see their mother breastfeed their younger sibling. If they're a very young new mom, they'll most definitely have seen mother, maybe even older sister or aunt or someone breastfeed, and then they will decide to breastfeed. Filipino Americans, what we'll see is that what I will experience is that they feel that they don't have enough milk, working away from home, and they tend to add formula because they feel like formula helps the baby grow instead of the breast milk. Some of the positive things is their husband is there. They will make a decision for breastfeed to encourage them, which is a very good thing. Japanese Americans, they have views similar to Filipino Americans. They feel that their milk will stall, or either it will either stop, or either it's not good for the baby, it's bad milk. They feel that the formula needs to be introduced with their baby's feeding plan for strong bones. So those are some of the challenges that I'll encourage the mother to know more about the benefits of breastfeeding. One thing that's positive is their mother-in-law may be present and will make a decision or encourage them to breastfeed. I have seen in my practice for sure that Japanese American, their husbands will also be involved to encourage them. The influences and the reflective moments that I've noticed that myself or a colleague working with me as lactation consultants is that if we are a part of their ethnic group, we will be considered their peer. So, for example, if my coworker is a Filipino American and she gets a Filipino family, they will look at her as a peer, and that will become a positive outcome. She'll become a part of the family to get them to their breastfeeding goals. And then language barriers, we do encounter that in practice. I know for sure that I work very closely with the interpreter in both Filipino and Japanese American families. Typically, the mother-in-law or the husband will work with the translator and translate back and forth with the mother. And then they will also work with me and translate to the mother as well. So I also turn into the peer support along with the interpreter. So we'll both be a part of the peer support for the families. Modesty tends to be important to immigrant spouses. However, I have seen modesty in all three of these cultural groups. What tends to happen in Filipino and Japanese Americans is that they will only breastfeed the baby around husband or mother-in-law. They won't breastfeed around the extended family. They won't breastfeed around the healthcare team. They will breastfeed around me and probably their assigned postpartum nurse. Or if they came from the labor deck, of course, they initiated breastfeeding with the labor and delivery nurse. For African Americans, they will have modesty issues probably towards males more than anything. So just the husband will be present at the breastfeeding, but they won't breastfeed around any other males, maybe not even around a male doctor. Okay, and let's go into the culture, spirit, and spiritual experiences. So the personal cultural encounters with ethnic groups, working within the cultural constraints of the group to which the mother belongs, the nurse can serve her client more completely and more likely to be viewed as a helper rather than the one who does not understand us. So for sure, if I am serving a multicultural group, I most definitely need to have that understanding that I need to be their peer. I need to be their cheerleader. I need to be their helper. So some of the questions most definitely will be asked about how they view breastfeeding. Um, were they fed themselves? Do they want the husband involved? Um, how long do you think you should breastfeed? So all these are different types of questions that I will ask that will get me to knowing about their cultural norms within their groups. I do share the same cultural beliefs. I am Black Indigenous. I am a Black Indigenous American. So for sure, my mother breastfed me, so I breastfed my son. I enrolled in classes when my doctor encouraged me to breastfeed. Filipino Americans, once again, I serve as their peer. I get the whole entire family involved. Most definitely have the husband really close to the mother helping out. And then Japanese Americans, most definitely, I tend to get the interpreters involved because um, they tend to need the support in their culture because they may use formula as a part of it, and that's basically because it's a barrier. So when I bring the interpreter in there, things get better, and we're on the road to good breastfeeding experience um, with dad involved and the interpreter involved for them. Um, as far as spiritual encounters, um, for me personally, I do typically talk about in nature with things being in nature as far as how we've evolved and we breastfeed. Um, we have breastfed throughout the century, so I usually receive good response from that they can do it. Um, and just kind of think about how they've evolved as a culture and spiritually to help them through the bonding process of breastfeeding. And then to sum it all up, my references. Um, a couple of free online websites I've listed here, and then I use the breastfeeding care in multicultural populations in the Journal of Obstetric, Gynecologic, and Neonatal Nursing. Once again, my name is Marilyn Dukes, and this is the end of my presentation. Thank you for listening in.